Brian Lair on WNYC. We're going to end today with a hyper-local summer beach story, not necessarily a happy one, and see if anybody listening right now is personally affected and wants to call in and share your thoughts. Here's the story. A new private club is set to open at Jacob Riis Park, that section of the Rockaway Peninsula that's known as the People's Beach. But after almost a decade of construction on the long-defunct Art Deco-style bathhouse, the owners of the upcoming Rockaway Ocean Club, as they're calling it, have pushed back its opening date several times this summer. Now they say it'll be open before the end of August. That would be the private version, the Rockaway Ocean Club. The renovated building would include restaurants, a concert space, beach shops, and eventually a hotel, they say. And it'll also house a members-only club with a pool and a lounge. So, of course, there's some debate over whether that kind of thing really belongs on public land because Jacob Riis Park is public land, federal land. Some say the developers are rightly bringing a long-abandoned landmark back to life. Others argue it's privatizing a beloved public space, that it's going to push longtime beachgoers out of, and in fact, it's one of New York's oldest LGBTQ gathering places, as it happens, on the eastern side of the beach there. Here to unpack it and to see if anybody out there wants to chime in is Liam Quigley, Parks and Sanitation reporter for WNYC and Gothamist. Hey, Liam, always good to have you on the show.
Hey, good morning.
And listeners, is anybody listening affected by this or potentially so, or on either side of this question? 212-433 WNYC. If you're a regular Riis beachgoer, we'd especially love to hear from you, but our phone's, as usual, open for anybody. Maybe you're a Rockaway resident. 212-433 WNYC. 212-433-9692. Call or text. All right, Liam, for people who haven't been following the story, in addition to what I said in the intro, what exactly is this club that's supposed to open at the Jacob Riis bathhouse?
Yeah, if you've been to Jacob Riis Beach, it's federally operated. It's between Fort Tilden and the Rockaways, and kind of a centerpiece for it is this long abandoned bathhouse that kind of is right in the middle of Riis Park, and it's been empty since the 70s. So that's what's been under renovation. You may have seen the construction fencing go up, and that's where they are building this Ocean Beach Club, which, like you mentioned, will eventually include 28 hotel rooms, concessions, an event space, and a pool. So that's kind of the focus of the construction right now. And like you mentioned too, it's been delayed a bunch of times. So it's kind of like that's what we're looking at having here on the beach.
Who uses the area now is concerned about getting locked out?
If you're familiar with Jacob Riis Beach, you know that at the end of it, towards the Rockaways, there's Gay Beach. It's like the People's Beach. It's a long-time queer gathering space going back decades. People who are facing real violence found respite there, and it's kind of been a safe haven for a long time. It's a really important community space that has felt to a lot of people more threatened, especially after 2023, when the city demolished an old hospital that kind of shielded that space from kind of the public view there. So that's the context in which, this partial privatization is kind of raising some real concerns among people who really cherish the People's Beach there.
So critics have described the project as privatizing public space or accelerating gentrification. The developers say they're restoring a landmark that had been abandoned for decades. Lay out their point of view. Are they saying the people who use the People's Beach, so-called Gay Beach, will still be able to use it in the way that they have?
The developers behind the project say, yeah, it's a false narrative that just because we're turning something that's been totally abandoned for decades into a really nice place that anyone, if you want to become a member, you can apply. There'll be spots, they say, that are open to the public. They'll be selling concessions on the beach. There'll be There'll be public, concerts that they really object to the framing of, a gentrification of the area. At the same time, they do say a lot of it is public, but it's public if you can afford to pay. So, that's kind of where they're coming from.
Right. And here's a text from a listener who writes, as a longtime Jacob Riis goer, this is going to ruin the whole allure there. Suddenly it'll belong to those who can afford it, and the rest of us will be velvet roped out of a beloved, quiet, and peaceful beach. Do you know what the membership will cost?
You're looking at around $1,200 to start, and it can go up to around $4,500 for a family from some distance away. You do have to put in a photo of yourself to apply for membership, write a short bio. The developers say anyone can apply, but people have raised concerns about, uploading a photo of yourself could be a way for people to discriminate. So that's kind of a concern there among some.
Courtney in the Rockaways, you're on WNYC. Hi, Courtney. Thank you for calling in.
Thank you for having me, and good afternoon. So I am really concerned about this. Something that people don't realize about Rockaway is that there's a long-term situation when it comes to segregation. If you're having people upload photos, who's going to actually have access to this, especially at this price point? I work for a community organization, and we strive to provide an equitable way for people to join. And there's no way that you can do that. There's no equity for the surrounding areas, for the property values. What are you actually bringing to public land? Is this yet again the private sector padding its pockets with the public's dollars? Nobody owns the sea. Nobody should own the beach. But clearly in Rockaway, that's what's been going on for millennia, when the people, especially the people of color, were never asked to come here. Not to mention that is a part of the beach where the only time you'll see folks of color is probably working in the concession. Not to mention, obviously, the LGBT or the cutie population that, make what? For every New York, $200,000, a black person makes $20,000. So how is this equitable, and how is this actually public? It's totally private, and it is velvet roping. Thank you.
Courtney, thank you. Yeah, and I think that 10-to-1 income stat is more. It's more about wealth and income, but it's so stark. Mm-hmm. A 10-to-1 in this 2026 day and age, still white to black, family assets, and all the other things that she mentions. Liam, here's a related text. Boo to the private club. I'm not sure how this whole thing is allowed, given that the beach is not only public, but a national park. So how would you answer that question? How is this thing allowed, given that the beach is not only public, but a national park?
So the National Park Service, unlike most beaches in our city, this is a National Park Service beach. So it's fairly common for them to work with concessionaires. And like they have here, they signed a 60-year lease agreement in which they say no public taxpayer dollars will be used, and that the beach club developers have to adhere to a fairly strict set of preservation methods to kind of keep this landmarked building the way it is. So that also owes a little bit, they say, to the delays in getting the space ready. But it is something that's fairly common for the NPS to do with private concessions.
Here's a slightly more supportive text of the plan. Listener writes, I love Riis. It's a gay haven and feels like old New York City. Beach club sounds tacky and unfab, but personally, live and let live. The LGBTQs will keep on. Is there any basis for that concept? Like, will so-called gay beach, people's beach, just kind of move down the sand a little bit or anything like that? It is a huge beach.
It's true. I mean, there's less beach as time goes on, given the erosion that's going on there. That is another kind of big thing happening in the background, or actually really right in front of the hotel space. The People's Beach is about 1,500 feet away from the hotel footprint. And it is true that the space has just been sitting dormant for decades, there have been proposals to instead have the city run a community center where that old hospital used to be, right next to the People's Beach, and have, free STD testing and a community kitchen and a real people space that kind of would reflect how that bathhouse was originally built, which was really a totally public building. But that's not the way things are going right now.
And the bathhouse sits on National Park Service land, but the developer, as I read, signed a 60-year lease. Is that unusual? Are there other examples of this kind of public-private partnership in national parks?
With NPS, yes. The duration, I don't know as far as the duration of that of that lease, but it's like, as I mentioned, it's fairly common for NPS to work with, concessionaires to take over stuff like this.
A couple more texts coming in that may be a little more supportive, like that last one of the project. One listener writes, the gay beach is at least a 10-minute walk from the bathhouse. I don't understand how the bathhouse interferes with the sand beach at all. And another one asking a question along those lines asks, to clarify, the private organization can't control access to the actual beach, correct? So what do you say to those two listeners?
Correct. There's nothing... I mean, in fact, you can't even swim right now in front of where the hotel will be, in front of where the bathhouse is, because of a really bad erosion that has kind of eaten away at that section of the beach. But no, there's nothing that's going to prohibit public access to the sand. So that's not something that's going to happen at all.
So if the alternative was another decade with the bathhouse sitting empty, how do critics respond to that? Do they think there was another path that could have preserved the building while keeping it entirely public?
It goes back, I think, to that proposal for a real community site where that old hospital used to be, or, not having, $1,200 membership to access a building that was originally, decades and decades ago, built for the public enjoyment.
And what's still left to be built? There's a hotel planned. You report more restaurants and event space. What's the full vision, and when is it expected to be complete? Some people might even like hearing this, who think, oh, gee, maybe I'll go spend a weekend at Rockaway Beach.
So the latest we have from the developers is August 15th, and that weekend will be the actual soft opening, which, as we talked about, has been delayed a number of times. So that's coming up. And then the hotel coming online will be the next summer, and the pool itself also, they're saying, around August 21st, I believe. So it's inching towards completion, but they encountered a lot of, construction hiccups, and just, it's a very, very old building.
Liam Quigley, our parks and sanitation reporter here at WNYC and Gothamist. Thanks for filling us in on this, Liam.
Thank you.
And that's the Brian Lehrer Show for today, produced by Mary Croak, Lisa Allison, Amina Cerna, Carl Boisrond, and Esperanza Rosenbaum. We had help today from Sasha Linden Cohen. Zach Gutter Cohen produces our Daily Politics podcast. Our intern this summer is Mariana Schultz. Megan Ryan is the head of Live Radio, and we had Juliana Fonda and Milt Ruiz at the audio controls. Stay tuned for all of it.